Not that long ago, I was sprawled out on my sofa back at home in London, and I had just eaten pretty much everything that you can find in the kitchen, from cereal to ice cream to crisps. I even used to do this thing where I would finish boxes of cereal and have to put them in the recycling bin so no one would know that I'd eaten it. In this video, I want to share with you how I've broken free, I've stopped emotional eating, I've stopped binge eating, I've become the best version of myself, I feel confident, I feel healthy. And I'm going to do that by helping you understand why you might be going through something similar. Because when you have the understanding of what's going on in your brain, you can then make the changes, which I'm going to share later on in the video, that you need to make in order to become this best version of yourself and ultimately just reach your potential. So let's get into it. All right, so the first thing that you need to understand is that you have been programmed, okay? And this has been happening for years on years on years on years on years, all right? And it's happened in two ways. The first way is that modern advertising is consistently and repeatedly hijacking your limbic system in your brain in order to, and I'm going to explain what this means in a minute, but just to give you a brief overview, in order to subconsciously program the associations that you have with different foods, okay? The second way is through the behaviors that you picked up throughout your childhood that have also been conditioned throughout your life, okay? I'm going to go into that later on in the video. After that, I'm going to provide some solutions to the issue that you're facing. But first off, let's just talk about how adverts really program your beliefs around food and your associations around food. The way that it works is that an advert is shown, okay, on the TV, and now on social media, on, I don't know, like billboards everywhere, okay? And this advert is attention grabbing, okay? And so what they'll do is they'll put like music on, which is loud. And then what they'll do is they'll use bold colors. They'll use like wacky characters. And immediately when this happens, right, all of these things in combination is that your eyes open, right? You're watching the TV, some brain dead TV's on, and then these like wacky colors come on the screen and you're like, whoa, my God, I need to watch this shit. And like immediately what happens is your analytical brain shuts off and your limbic brain turns on. And what I mean by the limbic brain turning on is this is the emotional side of your brain, right? If an emotionally significant event happens in your life, whether on the TV, whether in real life, this exact system turns on. And going back to evolutionary psychology, let's say you were walking around and you were just casually walking through the fields of the UK. And at some point, there was something that popped out of the ordinary, right? Maybe there was a cliff nearby, okay? And that was something that you weren't expecting. As a result of that thing not being expected, the same threat response would happen in your body where your limbic brain would turn on, your analytical brain would turn off, and you would be in this kind of instinctive mode where you're just seeking out threats, you're looking for potential dangers, and you're thinking about, okay, how am I going to survive this situation? Because ultimately you needed to survive. Now, since those evolutionary times, our brains have not changed at all. And marketers, because they're quite clever people, they know this, right? And so they basically hack your psychology and they're like, all right, if I put something attention grabbing, like an example of this is if you've watched Cadbury's advert before, I think 13 years ago or something, and I still remember it to this day, there was a gorilla and he was playing the drums. What the fuck has that got to do with the chocolate, bruv? Anyway, they use that in the advert, right? Because it's attention grabbing, okay? Another example is in McDonald's, there's an advert which is done about this boy. His dad has passed away and he's looking through this box. At the beginning of the video, they put like really sad, lonely, emotional music on. And as a result of this emotional music, you're trying to figure out what's going on. He's looking through this box and immediately your limbic brain has turned on because you're in this emotional state, right? It's like a guard in your brain. It's a guard in your brain which is constantly trying to seek out threats. And when something attention grabbing, which appeals to emotion, comes up in your life, this guard is like alarm bells, bum, 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 and it tells your whole body to basically turn on this kind of threat response, which shuts off the analytical brain. Because if you think about it, like if there was a lion roaming around and it pops out of nowhere, you don't want to be analyzing the situation and planning too much, right? You just want to be acting on your instincts, fight or flight. Let's just get the job done. Let's make sure we get out of this situation safely, all right? And so this is exactly how marketeers grab your attention right at the beginning of adverts. And if they do it well, then you continue to watch. And this is what I'm going to share next. So what happens throughout the advert, the second part that happens, let's do part 2, is that they create emotional tension. And so usually what they'll do, and I'm going to explain how this impacts your decision-making behavior, but what happens is they will highlight different insecurities and desires that people have, or the target audience that they are trying to target in the ad has, and then they will craft some sort of compelling story that appeals to these insecurities and desires. So in the McDonald's example, I'll link the YouTube video in the show notes below. But in the YouTube video, in the McDonald's advert, what happened was this boy, he was looking for his dad's stuff. And then throughout the rest of the video, he starts asking his mum about his dad. And then his mum would say, oh, like his dad was really smart, or his dad liked football. This is all the things that he wasn't. He wasn't that good at football. He was quite scruffy. He wasn't good with the ladies. And because of that, it made this boy feel a little bit insecure. Now, if there's a boy watching the advert, or maybe a dad watching the advert, he might be thinking to himself, oh yeah, I'm not similar to my kid, right? So because it's appealing to emotion, these thoughts start to occur in your brain when you're watching these adverts, okay? And it starts to highlight and bring to surface the insecurities that you are experiencing in your day-to-day life, but you might not be fully conscious of them, but they might just be there under the surface. And what happens is the advert creates this emotional tension, which influences your purchasing behavior. And I'm going to explain in a minute how this actually works. But usually adverts will do this throughout the middle part of an advert. And what it's doing is basically setting you up to then end up buying their product. When this emotional tension is created, what it really is doing is highlighting the unmet needs that you have in your life. And if you think about any time that you've ever bought something or even taken action, it basically starts with an unmet need in your head, right? And the simplest form of this, and the most common form of this, if you're hungry, which is an unmet need, you'll go and buy food. I went for a run this morning in Bali, and it was nice through the rice fields, but it's quite hot here, so started sweating quite a lot. As a result of sweating quite a lot, I come back and I feel hot and tired, and so I want to have a shower. And so that unmet need, that tension has caused me to act, right? And so in these adverts, all they're trying to do is create this tension, highlight the unmet needs, and as a result of that, you will end up acting at some point, okay? And then finally what they do is they will position, and this is part 3 of an advert, they'll position the product as the solution, okay? So like, by this point, because of the attention grabbing and the emotional tension, you're so bought into the advert and what they're saying that your analytical mind is not even questioning anything, right? Because you're just thinking about how, like in the McDonald's advert case, how maybe your relationship with your dad isn't that great, or how maybe there's that Maltesers ad with your friends, or maybe you don't have as many friends. All of these different things will be coming up and you'll be thinking about them subconsciously. And this happens within a split second, right? So you don't even realize it's happening. But then what happens is, in the end of the advert, the product will be the solution. So in the case of the McDonald's ad, what happens is the boy and his mum, they're talking about his dad throughout the whole advert. He's basically getting quite sad because he's not common with his dad, who he doesn't know. And then he goes into McDonald's and he orders a Filet-O-Fish burger. Don't know why the fuck he orders that, but he does. And then he takes a bite into it and his mum says, oh, you're just like your dad. You ordered a Filet-O-Fish burger. And then he gets some of that like tartar sauce on his lip. And when he has the tartar sauce on his lip, what happens is he basically licks it, and then she says to him, his mum says to him, oh yeah, just like your dad, he always used to spill it on his lips. And so that's another way that he's become common with his dad. And so that unmet need is met, but guess what it's met by? It's met by McDonald's, okay? And so what they do is they create this sense of like maybe loneliness, maybe like lack of family, maybe missing, all of these feelings, right, that people commonly feel throughout the advert. So they create this emotional tension, and then McDonald's, McD's, becomes the big solution. And so then what happens at the end of this advert is that you unconsciously associate McDonald's with the solution of nostalgia, bonding with your family, being common like with other generations, like people who are really young like McDonald's, people are middle-aged like McDonald's, people are old also like McDonald's, right? And so because we've created all these associations, McDonald's, through repetition, then conditions us into thinking that McDonald's is the go-to place. If you're a young family who not sure what to eat and maybe have had an argument and you want to bond, McDonald's becomes the go-to place. And this is all very subtle. And obviously after seeing one advert, you're not going to consciously have that association, but then how often do you think that adverts are shown? They're literally everywhere, like social media, Instagram, YouTube, and then you have Facebook, you have on TV, you have newspapers, you have billboards. And so through that constant repetition, this neural wiring is created. So you have that association between not McDonald's and food, not McDonald's and chips, but McDonald's and family, McDonald's and nostalgia, and McDonald's and maybe feeling happier because the boy went from sad to happy, okay? And so this is the power of modern day advertising on the associations that you have with all these foods, right? They're all just learned through repetition, consistent exposure to the way that these brands are framing their products. And it's important to be aware of this, because if you don't know how you've been conditioned and how you've been programmed, you're just going to keep getting programmed, and that's the thing. You're not just going to ever stop being programmed unless you become aware of it. And so that's the purpose of this video, is to understand that, okay, like you've just been told and shown that food equals comfort because throughout your childhood, you've been shown marketing that has created this unconscious association. And it's stupid because the government is, oh yeah, like we have a like health crisis. Yeah, of course we do, because there's massive conglomerates, right, who are paying millions, maybe even billions of pounds into all of this advertising to create these associations. When, you know, like you have that Galaxy advert, and I don't even like eat Galaxy often, but I still remember in the back of my head that Galaxy is associated with kind of this like luxurious, velvety, kind of sexy association, because they use like the type of actresses they use. Maltesers is one of those ones where you like share with a friend. I think Kit Kat is one of those ones where you like have a break, and so if you want to have a break at work, maybe you're going to opt for a Kit Kat, right? There's so many different examples of this, and all the brands are doing it. They're all paying obscene amounts of money to do it. And so it's so important to just be aware of how you are being conditioned, because that is going to impact your behavior, because they are hijacking your analytical brain when they show these adverts. And so what that means is that your analytical brain shuts off, so you don't even have the opportunity to decide whether this goes into your subconscious, right? Because when you watch these adverts, especially if you are really focused on it, your brain states will change from beta to alpha. Now, I'm just going to give you an overview of what this is, but basically beta brain waves are like fast, okay? That's when you're concentrating, like me talking to you right now. Alpha is when it slows down a little. It's when you're daydreaming, okay? Now, when you're daydreaming, okay, when you're maybe watching this advert, when your conscious mind isn't turned on, you can just implant information. And imagine, like, we've been watching these adverts since we were like 2 years old, right? And we're going to have these associations that just continually and compound over time. And if you think about, if every single year you're just like seeing these adverts on social media or on TV, like that shit is 100% going to compound, right? And so you're going to have these associations in your brain. And there was a study done in 2023, and 718 people were shown different types of ads. Some were shown non-food ads, some were shown highly processed, some were shown minimally processed food. And like, they took studies of the people that actually looked at the ads beforehand, and they found that people that weren't typically addicted to food or had any associations with food prior to being shown the ads, afterwards had an emotional attachment to hyper palatable food after being shown the ad. Okay, so these guys, they had no association with food. They figured this out through surveys. They didn't feel like they needed to eat all the time. They didn't have any issues with food prior to seeing the ad. But after seeing the ad, they found that this group of people specifically had more emotional attachment to hyperpalatable food and the expectation of what that hyperpalatable food will do for them afterwards. And so this is the power of advertising. This is the power of marketing. And these companies are paying lots and lots of money to condition you into creating these associations in your head so that you view food as comfort, helping you bond with other people, maybe an ease for boredom. Maybe when you're having a break, you need one of these things, right? This is all just learned over time. Okay, so that is the first point. And I'm gonna share how you can reprogram your brain, because this is what getting over emotional eating is all about, right? It's just about making sure that you don't respond to your emotions with food, and you don't have the associations of food to the feelings that you're currently having. And hopefully understanding the first point will actually help you. But the second thing is that obviously throughout your life, you have also just learned some behaviors and you've taken action. And so just to reiterate this point, there's an experiment that is done called, you might have heard of it before, but it's Pavlov's dog, right? Okay. And Pavlov had a dog, and at lunchtime, maybe 12 p.m., he would give his dog some food. Okay. 12 p.m. food. And at this time, the dog would salivate because he would maybe smell the food, and then he would know that he needs to prepare his body for the food, right? But then what Pavlov does, he starts ringing a bell and food. Now, prior to this, he's tested that if he just rings a bell without any food, the dog does not salivate. But now he starts ringing the bell and bringing the food at the same time. And obviously, because the food is there, the dog is salivating. Now, after he's had a few repetitions of this, okay, he then tries just the bell. And so prior to this, just the bell is no salivation. And now, after having the bell and food, the dog starts to salivate, which is super interesting, right? Because it clearly shows that we are able to condition our responses. It relates to the first point where obviously what I was saying before was that we create these associations with food because of marketing, and that's exactly how they do it, right? They just pair something that we desire with their brand and their product, and as a result of that association, next time we're walking around and we're maybe feeling a little bit emotionally insecure, we're like, all right, let's go get that, because we think that in our subconscious, that product is going to solve our problem. Now, another way that this happens is through your childhood. And I'll tell you a story. When I was younger, I used to, after school, go to a childminder's house. And when I used to go to my childminder's house, I would go with my brother most of the time, but my brother was 4 years older than me. And at some point, he started to go to secondary school, and he stopped coming to my childminder's house after school, and I still continued to go. Now, at this point, I used to just be there alone most of the time, and so I used to just watch TV. And my dad would pack me a snack, but Martina, bless her, she would have a box of chocolates at her house, And so I'd be watching TV, I'd have my own snack, I'd finish it off, and then I'd get a bit bored. And eventually I'd just venture over to Martina and be like, can I have some chocolate, please? And sometimes I'd go 2, 3, 4 times, and obviously she's a nice lady, she's not gonna be like, nah, you can't have any chocolate, to a little, I don't know how old it was, like 8-year-old boy. And so I used to just eat it, and obviously the repetition of that is now creating this association in my head that whenever I get bored, I eat, okay? And yes, it might have been harmless at that time. I don't think I was fat at 8 years old, but then as I got a little bit older, at the age of 10, I started to get fat, and then it just compound like a snowball. If you think about a snowball and you imagine you're just like rolling it through the snow every single day for 10, 12 years, right? You're just putting more and more snow on it. It's gonna get massive, right? It's gonna get like huge. That's what happened to me, where this neural circuitry in my brain that associated boredom with chocolate became so strong, because when I was in school, I remember that I would take snacks to my lessons because I knew that I was gonna get bored in my lessons. I remember that I used to go home, used to get on the Met line from Moore Park. This is where my school was. There's like this post office, and I would go into the post office and buy like a massive packet of Ting Fist sticks, a massive packet of like Maltesers, and I'll just polish it off like within the next day, literally smash it out just because I was bored. One time, I think I bought like McDonald's fries and I brought them home, but I didn't want my parents to know that I'd brought them home. So like I hadn't finished them just yet. So I had to put like the empty pack or half the pack into the cupboard and hide it there. And like, you can see how like that small habit and that small association of eating chocolate when I was bored at home at Martina's house then became something that became such a strong habit throughout my teenagehood, and then eventually led me to being 125 kilos when I was 18 or 19, because eating when I was bored just became the like instant kind of response, and other things as well, which we won't go into in this video. And the thing is, it's like when you first drive a car, right? Like when you first drive a car, you don't have the neurons wired together for you to be able to drive the car, so you have to consciously do it. So when I was a kid, maybe I was like consciously doing it. Actually, when you're younger, I guess you're not really conscious about your things. You're just unconsciously, impulsively taking action. But even by the time that I was an adult and I realized I was doing it, it was so unconscious because that neural wiring was tied together that I didn't have to think about doing it. And so we pick up these habits when we're children. We pick up these habits when we're younger, and they just stay with us. And so we have to become conscious of the unconscious, which is what I'm going to be talking about in the last part of this video. So we've talked about, number one, how marketing is very much designed to make you want to eat food. Okay, it creates these associations between fulfilling your unmet needs and the foods that these big companies sell. And as a result of those associations, we look to these foods whenever we're feeling a little bit low. What happens when we're children or throughout our life is that we build up these habits, and these neural pathways build up, and over time, these reactions to the emotional stimuli that we're feeling at any given point become so unconscious that we don't realize that we're doing it. And so now it's all about creating a routine in our life to become conscious of the unconscious and to really be able to change. Because if we can rewire our brain, then we're going to be able to change our behavior. And so often people, when they want to try and stop emotional eating, will be like, yeah, I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But like all of those actions are quite empty, because it doesn't really solve the issue of the rewiring that needs to happen in order to change our associations with the food that we eat, okay? And so what I want you to do from now on, you don't have to do it, but I think, honestly, if you can get your head around this, brother, you're gonna have the best relationship with food. All right, so every day you're traveling through a forest, okay? And this forest is got two paths. Now, one path, the track is completely beaten, it's ridden on and you've been through this path, okay? The other track has loads of like trees, it's not like you're gonna have to use a fucking machete to smash through the leaves and get through everything. But that path is where all the fruits lie, because you've been down the path on the left so many times that there's nothing there. It's actually a bit boring, it's a bit depressing, it's a bit frustrating. Now that path is the path that you've lived for the last however many years, where you're frustrated, you're emotional eating, you're comfort eating, you've not got a good relationship with food, okay? That is the easy path to go down every single day when you wake up. That is the path, excuse me, that is the path that it takes no effort to go down, but it has no reward. In fact, it has negative reward because you have to still go through the path. You still have to expend energy, but you come out the other side and you've literally just feel so frustrated because you've made all this effort and there's nothing there. The second path, however, you're gonna need a machete to get down, but that's where all the fruits lie, okay? You got dragon fruit, you got apples, you got bananas, you got grapes, you got everything that you need, right? But you need to get a machete and you need to break down that path. You need to forge that path every single day. And this is the path of the new behaviors. And so when you wake up, every single day you need to think, I'm going into battle with my old self. I'm going into battle with my old self, all right? I am becoming a new person today, okay? And you can bloody repeat it with me, bruv. I am becoming a new person today. I'm killing my old self. And that sounds kind of morbid, but like, honestly, it's the thing that you need to do. It is the thing that you need to do. If you want to change, you have to kill your old self and build your new self. Kill your old self and build your new self, all right? So that's what you're gonna do. And you're gonna go down this path with the machete and you're gonna fight through that. And you're gonna get the fruits. You're gonna get the dragon fruit. You're gonna get the fucking apples, bananas, all the new fruits. And you're gonna come out of it every single day and you're gonna put your head on your pillow and you're like, I did it. I did well today, okay? Now, before you go on this path, all right, you need to understand you're now a warrior, okay? And warriors don't just go into battle without training. And so you need to set aside time to train, because otherwise you're just never gonna make it through the new path and you're just gonna end up going down the old path every single day, okay? Now, look, the best warriors get a mentor. And so if you wanna work with me over the next 90 to 180 days in order to completely transform your eating habits and your life, then just book a call with me. Click the link in the description. It shares some of the information. It's very simple, but honestly, it will be life-changing for you. And so if you want to fast track your results, that's what you got to do. But look, if you want to take things a bit slower, then I don't know why you would, but don't do that. But you still need to do the training, okay? You still need to get ready to fight every single day, okay? And what that means is that you need to have a training ground, okay? And what that means is that you need a space for yourself, which is free of distractions, which is gonna allow you to prepare your mind for the rest of the day, okay? And it doesn't matter where this is. It could be a fucking tile on the floor, like, it doesn't really matter. But you need this space because this space is gonna become your haven, all right? And the more that you do the things that I'm gonna share in a minute, the better you're gonna become at training. And as a result of getting better at training, you're gonna be better at using that machete to fight the day and become your new self, all right? And kill your old self, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is the activities that you need to pursue, all right? And it's the 3M morning warrior ritual, okay? I'm gonna explain the 3Ms, all right? So first M is movement. I don't care, all right, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. You gotta move in the morning, every single day without fail. You wake up an hour before you need to go anywhere, maybe even a bit longer, and you move your body, whether that's going for a walk, whether that's going for a stretch, whether that's doing some yoga, whether that's lifting weights, like whatever the fuck you wanna do, you move your body, you show up for yourself, because if you can master yourself, because there's gonna be times when you wanna wake up in the morning and there's gonna be that voice in your head that says, brother, go back to sleep, mate. The bed's so comfy. You don't need to move today. It's okay to take a rest day. And you're gonna be like, nah, fuck you, all right? So that's the first thing. Because when you do that, you 100% conquer yourself. And when you conquer yourself, that means that later on in the day, when you have that same voice in the head telling you, oh yeah, why don't you go have some chips, bro? Or why don't you go have some chocolate? You can tell that voice to shut the fuck up. Because that's what it takes, okay? So you show up for yourself every single day in the morning. It could even be 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be that long, 10 minutes. Whatever you feel like you should be doing, you pick a time and you do it. Start with 1 minute, I don't even care, and build it up gradually. But do something. Number 2 is mindfulness. Now, this is powerful. This is the most important 3 minutes that you're going to spend every single day. And you only need to do 3 minutes a day, but I would recommend doing longer and just progressively overloading it like you do in the gym. But start off, if you've never done any meditation, mindfulness before, start off by just sitting down and looking around and like literally just not having any stimulation for 1 minute. If you can do more than that, then cool. But that's the starting place. And what's going to happen is you're going to start to realize that you're having loads of thoughts and they're coming very chaotically and very disorderly. And that's going to be uncomfortable. But eventually you're going to be able to start to see them a little bit more clearly. All right? And then once you start to get to see them, later on in the day, when you have all these temptations, all these things pulling you in different directions, you're going to be like, oh shit. And then you're going to be able to change because you have the awareness to be able to do that. But without awareness, you're going to stay the same. All right? And in 10 years' time, you're still going to be eating chips when you're stressed or some shit. All right. And number 3 is mental rehearsal. And I remember like I would pair the mindfulness and mental rehearsal together back in 2021. And in 2021, like one of the things that I did really was that I was able to be pretty disciplined, maybe too disciplined at times. But I was able to uphold very strong discipline. I'd wake up at 4 a.m., do a cold shower, do all that warrior shit. And one of the things that I would do in order to change my eating habits, which I think was so powerful, was that I would literally rehearse in my head the whole day. I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna lift weights, I'm gonna come home, I'm gonna have my breakfast, I'm not gonna have any snacks. That would be critical because I was quite a big snacker back in the day and I have these urges, and learning to have that discipline of not having snacks was so important for me. And I did that by mentally rehearsing and being like, all right, you're not gonna have the snacks. Because what happens when you mentally rehearse is that your brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. Okay, so you create this visualization in your head of you doing the thing that you want to do, and if your brain feels like you've already done it. And so just by mentally rehearsing, you create these neurons in your brain that allow you to do the activities that you want to do a lot easier, which is abstaining from the snacks when you feel emotional, for example. And they've done studies on this as well. An example of this is, I think they had people practicing piano and people mentally rehearsing them practicing the piano. And they found that the people that mentally rehearsed them playing the piano after 5 weeks of doing it or whatever, I can't remember the exact number of weeks, were able to, they did brain scans on these people. They had the same neurons firing as the people who had physically practiced the piano. So just by mentally rehearsing, they created the neural wiring, okay? And so this neuroplasticity from mental rehearsal, and neuroplasticity is literally just the rewiring of the neurons, is so possible just by mentally rehearsing. And so you may as well just add it to your arsenal of tools that you can use in order to build these better habits, okay? And it takes 5 minutes to do. You just have to close your eyes and just think to yourself, okay, usually when I go to the cupboard and I get the food out and eat it, I'm not going to do that today. And you have to envision yourself going to the cupboard and walking out the room without eating the food. And I guarantee later on it's going to be easier. All right, so that is it. This will help you stop emotional eating. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, you are the person that you want to be. Peace.